So I grew up on a council estate, and it was with all the usual disadvantages. It was horrible. It's the Nelson Mandela thing, He said, "I never lose. I either win or I learn. We are the stories we tell ourselves." And so good leader will teach us to tell ourselves good stories. Fear of failure holds us back from living our best lives. I can't stay somewhere where I'm not happy. I've always walked away from every job or situation where I'm not happy, because we'll all be dead one day. Our time on this planet is so short. Why would I spend a day in the wrong place?
Felix, thank you very much for joining me on Success Matters podcast. You are an author, you were a comedic writer, you were a sort of high-powered business person who sold your business for lots and lots, and then now you work for other businesses and you do coaching and you do, the list is endless. Where do we begin, Felix? Where does your story start?
I think the most the most important thing that happened to me in my life. So if you're going to ask that question, I had a mentor growing up. So I grew up on a council estate, and as you can tell from the accent, and I grew up on a council estate, and and it was with all the usual disadvantages. It was a horrible council estate at 6, and I think I would have gone down a certain path, and I got introduced to a retired civil servant who was a Marxist, he was a lifelong communist, and a member of the party for 50 years.
Okay,
and he said, "I don't care about your politics, but justify them. Just justify them." And he slapped me up the side of the head. And he intellectually took no prisoners. And it made me so much more rigorous. It changed my life. It changed my life. And it made me grow up intellectually, but also see the world totally differently, because he was a communist. So he had a communist's perspective. I didn't rush down and sign up to the Communist Party, but I thought it meant I didn't have to just accept the narrative. And and I've never accepted the narrative. And that was the biggest thing that's ever happened to me in my life, comfortably. And so, but again, it's intellectually, because that's what propels us through life, really. I went to university to do philosophy, mental philosophy, as the Scottish call it.
Okay.
As if it'd be confused with something else. And then I became a comedy writer. I went straight to the BBC and just turned up and said, "I want to be a comedy writer." And I did that for about 10 years. But it's the most amazing intellectual grounding, because what's really interesting, and I talk about this when I sort of give my keynotes and what have you, is that, in business, someone will have an idea and people say, "Oh, that's a good idea, let's do that." Fair enough, and good luck to you. In comedy, you're in a writer's room, and we'll be doing a joke about Trump blowing up Venezuelan boats, whatever terrible thing it is, yeah. And someone will crack a joke, and we'll all laugh up to a point. And we'll laugh, and we'll all think independently, that's a 20,000-foot joke, And then someone will crack a joke, it's a 10,000-foot joke, and we'll all, no. And then someone will crack a joke, and we'll all laugh quite hard because it's a 30,000-foot joke.
Right.
Well, what we're looking for is a 40,000-foot joke. But what's interesting is, we all know when we get there. We all know. We don't have to tell each other. We can all say, what height was that? That's 20,000. And we'd all agree, give or take. But with comedy, you have to reach for brilliance. You have to reach for an idea, a thought that is absolutely at the pinnacle. And then you've done your job. And then if sure, the producer will be like, "No, go again. That's terrible. We can't put that in the air, But what happens is, day in, day out, for 10 years, I was trying to have the best thought I could. And it's the most rigorous training. So, that muscle in me is completely developed. And I can't go into any situation and tolerate good enough ideas. And when people settle, I come out in hives, because like, "Well, what are you doing?" He's like, "What, don't you want to, don't you want to have a brilliant idea?"
Yeah.
And it was the most amazing grounding. And I should probably start a comedy course for executives, because it would teach them how far they could think. And that's what I do. I do. I've ended up as a moonshot strategist, where I do that. But comedy would be an interesting way to focus it. Anyway, so I bang away my CV.
Well, let's start with growing up in a council estate, right?
Yes.
That's usually, as you say, that can often lead to maybe ending up on the wrong side of the tracks, or going down the wrong path. So how did you get introduced to this mentor, and how did it come to be that someone who's got, some might argue, quite strong views, right, from a political perspective, came to be mentoring you, and put you, as you said, slapped you around the head a few times intellectually around what you were thinking?
Well, it was fascinating. He was there was a really lovely chap. He was a Stalinist, which is not a good breed of communism. Let's be honest.
Okay.
This chap Alex Gascoigne was really wonderful in the community. He was always organising things, and he was a very sweet guy. He was always running through parties for the kids. Him and his wife were just amazing. They'd take the kids away on camp, and they believed in community. And it was really, and they lived their beliefs. It was very sweet. And I was doing an A-level project on Jesus and Marxism, and I was basically equating the two as one. And he said, "Yeah, this is out of my league." He said, "You need to speak to Eddie Dare," and he introduced me to Eddie Dare. And it was before that, it was before A-levels, and Eddie Dare made very short shrift of everything I was doing. Introduced me to a bunch of texts I would never have read, but really good. The revolutionary communists talking about Jesus, talking about the revolutionary it was the revolutionary Catholics in South America who were really pushing for a very left-wing ideology, not just politics, but ideology, which the Americans stamped out furiously and viciously in the post-war period. And of course, and again, the narrative in my life changed because it was time of Thatcherism, which was very, it was a very combative time, very sad, I'm in Norway right now. When Britain discovered North Sea oil, Margaret Thatcher used it to fund her attempt to reshape the economy. The GDP of the UK spent on welfare exploded under Thatcher. For someone who was trying to actually make us a working economy and get rid of all the, the trade unions and all these sort of people are scrounging on the benefits, the welfare bill exploded under Thatcher. And she had to fund that with oil money from Scotland. At the same time, Norway put all their money into a sovereign wealth fund. They now have the world's biggest sovereign wealth fund. And so this place is eerily blissful. Everything is lovely. The roads are lovely. The shops are lovely. Everyone is lovely. Everyone's calm, very calm. But I grew up in that Thatcherite period, which was very, pugilistic and very combative. So to have his voice and his narrative retelling of saying, look, the world's not the way they're telling you it is. And it wasn't left-wing, it wasn't communist left-wing propaganda. It was all factually correct because I checked it then and I keep checking, and I've come across it loads. And it was the way we were being lied to by, and how, the American foreign policy is the worst the world's ever seen in the 20th century. I mean, America overthrew every government in Central and South America after the Second World War. I mean, it's shocking record. But of course, we're not taught that at school. And I also learned about the British Empire in a way I'd never known. I thought the British Empire was Rudyard Kipling and wonderful, Zulu and all that malarkey. And of course, it's in the grand scheme of things, probably the most brutal empire as ever ruled the world. It was terrible, And so, but again, it was but you can't be exposed to that and then not go, I need to question everything. I have to question everything now. And I've questioned everything ever since. And now I'm just I'm just curious. I'm curious about everything. And don't assume that I'm right. It's funny. I know I go out and give talks and all those sorts of things. But my starting point is the Socratic, all I know is that I know nothing,
Right.
So, there you go.
No. And so then when you rocked up at the BBC to be a comedy writer, I mean, they didn't just open the door and say, oh, Felix, come in, be a comedy writer. How did you land that gig?
The BBC is very good at having a few shows, like a couple, any one time where you can just submit jokes. And so I was on Weekending, which was kind of like, have I got news for you kind of thing, and it was a sketch show. Then it's more like the Now Show. And it was quite a great training ground because you cut your teeth, you write jokes about, satirical jokes. And then what happens is a producer says, you're good at that. Why don't you come onto this show, And so you go and do that show. And then another producer likes you. And, you're as good as your last gig, basically, And it's very, it's very cutthroat. There's not cutthroat against each other, but it's very unforgiving. There's no, if I had sort of fallen in love with communism and wanted a wonderful world of safety nets, there was none in the world I went into.
Right.
So from day one, I've been self-employed. Really, self-employed or self-unemployed, as I used to call it. And I've been that for one word, mostly forever, for about with about 7 years of being employed. But otherwise, I've been self-employed all my life. So that you come in and it's great. The BBC do it very well. You know, I will love the BBC forever.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I mean, that's pretty cool. And I didn't realize that was a way into being a comedy writer in an organization like that. So you went on then to run a company which got listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So how did you do that shift from comedy writing to being the boss of a big company?
So my then wife and I had a child, and she felt that comedy was all very well, but maybe I should get a job where I earn money.
Okay, a proper job.
Yeah. So I got a job in the city at the age of 30, which is incredibly old to start in the city. It was bonkers. And I went into sales at a brokerage, and I was really shocked because, hand on heart, I thought I'd be dealing with brain surgery. I thought the city, they were all 6 figures. You know, it's 100. And I looked around and said, well, where's everyone doing the complicated stuff? You know, where's the clever stuff? You know, and it was so much easier than joke writing. And so after a few years, not many years, about 3 years or so, I thought, right, well, this will be well, but I can't. This isn't going to go anywhere. It's not fulfilling. And so I started my own company, and 15 months sold it back to the city on the very eve of the credit crunch, and
Right.
gone to MF Global. And I'm very proud to say that in a month of me joining MF Global, their share price had collapsed 95%. I took some part in that, you know. So yeah, I did that, and then and I found myself sitting on the global executive of a New York Stock Exchange listed company, which was peak imposter syndrome. I just I looked around thinking, how am I here? You know, but because I started and sold a company, they held me in high regard. It was nice. But again, I thought the credit crunch was a terrible moment of failure. It was and everyone was blaming everybody else. You know, regulators were blaming the banks were blaming, the regulators, And I just really couldn't tolerate it. And I just thought, I need to go. And don't get me wrong, I've got lots of banker friends. I've got nothing against the banker system per se. But I was very frustrated that we live in a world where bankers earn so much more than nurses. That will never change for me. They'll never change. And again, I say to people, if I'd say to a banker, we're going to be a nurse for a week. Go on, just show me. Go do that. Go and clean up after a dead person. Go and go look after an old lady who's not well. Did it, all that sort of stuff. So I wasn't. I just didn't fit the city really. I didn't in that respect. Even though I sort of I've got huge regard for so much that gets done and what have you. It's not the city. It's the system. It's not the city actually.
Right.
So anyway, but I found myself thinking, right, I want a different adventure, and I was given 25% of a copper mine in Zambia.
Okay.
On the proviso that I just ran the whole project. And they said, as long as you organize everything and get the whole mine up and running, you can have 25%. So, and that was, as you do. So I went off to do that, and it was the most amazing chapter, probably. Might be the most amazing chapter of my life. I mean, I'm happiest doing what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
But as an adventure, we'd go to Zambia and negotiate with President Banda personally a couple of times.
Right.
To have to negotiate with tribal chiefs because you can't mine their land unless you get their blessing. And they quite rightly extract different concessions from you. That was fascinating and incredibly humbling because some were you'd be suited and you could have walked out of Goldman Sachs executive boardroom, and others were in a bit of a mess, and it was very sad. You saw quite a cross section, and you knew there was a story there. It was a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
So, but that was amazing, and then but that came to an end because to walk away with my money, I would literally have to kill people down a river. I'd have to poison, and I thought, you know what? I quite like sleeping at night, and so I moved away, and everyone else in the consortium stayed. Who got tens of minutes. So that was a life changing moment for me. But I've got a mirror that I can look into, so I'm pleased with that. And then I wrote a couple of thrillers for Penguin because and that was interesting actually because I'd walked away from writing. I'd gone into the city.
Yeah.
And all my friends were very smart people, people like you, and I've got surgeon friends, barrister friends, and all my friends would say, we don't understand what happened to the credit crunch. We just don't get it, And I'd read every book on it because I thought I find intellectually I dig things, and I thought, no one would want to read these books that I'm reading. I like it, but I'm a bit nerdy,
Yeah.
And so I thought I'd write a thriller that explains the credit crunch. So
okay.
Set up. And the setup had one job only, which was to be the most entertaining way to tell the story of the credit card, which, of course, Big Short did brilliantly. That's just brilliantly, if you've seen the film.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I wrote that, and then it went terrifically, and I wrote another one, and then some friends' company was in trouble, big IT company, and they asked me to turn it around, and I did that. And as I was handing it back, they said, "Could you stay on as an advisor?" Which I did, and one thing led to another, and now I'm a moonshot strategist and public speaker.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a journey that you've been on, Felix.
I guess so.
You always seem to land on your feet based on this.
Yes.
So for a listener listening into this, or a viewer, what advice would you give them so that they always land on their feet?
I think we worry too much. We worry about the consequences too much. I mean, when I was in Zambia, the worst that could happen is I come home. When I was in the city, the worst, you've got employment risk when you've got a job, you've got employment risk, which is not great, but actually just get another job, And I've got one, I can't stay somewhere where I'm not happy. So I've always walked away from every job or situation where I'm not happy, because we'll all be dead one day. And it sounds really, pat to say it, but I'm afraid I believe it vividly. I really am alive to the fact that, our time on this planet is so short. Why would I spend a day in the wrong place? I can't do it. And I think from that, I give a talk called Failing Upwards, which is all about the fact that fear of failure holds us back from living our best lives. And what we forget is, if you look at, say, the greatest, chess player, or the greatest basketball player, or the greatest whatever, to get to that level, you have to fail. You've got a ladder of failure. You lose, and then one day you win. Then you lose in a different setting, and then you win, and then so on. And most of that's failure, if you want to frame it that way. Or it's a lesson. And it's a lesson. So anything that happens to me is just a lesson. So when I don't get the outcome I would have loved, I said, well, I've learned something. It's the Nelson Mandela thing. He said, I never lose. I either win or I learn.
Yeah.
And I think if you take that mindset, which is, it makes you fearless, it makes you invincible, because worst that can happen is I learn. And then what I learn of it will be amazing. Just amazing, And because how else do you get that knowledge? How else do you get without jumping into the lion's den, And I think because, one truth that is vivid in my mind, having grown up on a council estate, is that character is forged in adversity. We know that if you pamper a child, they're doomed. They're doomed. You've got to say no to a child occasionally. You can't get everything they want. All these things, or you ruin them. So when I have a setback, I just think, right, well, what can I learn from that? As in, I'll get quite excited. Don't get me wrong, it's timing and all these things, but you go, I know so much more than I knew a week ago.
Yeah.
I think you just have to embrace the outcome, and don't judge yourself by it. Don't judge yourself. And too many people judge themselves by, if I can achieve this or get my company to £3 million value, whatever the number is, then I'll be worth it. I'll be good enough. And it's got nothing to do with that valuation. Are you a good person? There's an old lady struggling across the road. Would you help her? So I think it's the stories we tell ourselves, and people are very scared. More than anything, they're scared. And I would just urge people to really think about how bad the consequences aren't. They're okay. You pick yourself up, does you? Muhammad Ali said, he said, winners are the people who get back up off the canvas. He said, losers stay down. Winners get up.
Yeah.
He didn't say winners are the ones who won the fight or won the championship. Winners are the ones who get back up. And I don't say that in some gung-ho American, we could all be billionaires BS. I mean, in the sense of life's going to knock you back a bit. Suck it up.
Yep.
Brush off the dust. Get back up. And that's what I would say. It's just, embrace it and just understand you're going to fail. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody fails. And I'm talking about, Jamie Dimon at the head of JP Morgan, all these things, we all fail. But you suck it up and you go, what next? And that gives you a chance to reach the level you really want to reach.
Yeah, we seem to lose that in life, right? Because when you're a baby and you're learning to walk, before you've fallen over so many times before you actually do walk, and everyone celebrates it. Everyone celebrates you trying to take that first step and not making it, and then you making those steps. But somehow it flips as we get older to you feeling like you're a failure because you fell down or whatever, and people also pointing fingers, which I think actually is probably more of it, is not even just the internal, but what will the people around me say? What will the people who are in my network say? What will people think of me, when actually they're only cared about their own life, right? They don't really care about your life.
Well, it's better than that, because I've never met a person, because I've tried a lot of things, and I've never met a person of any merit who's ever criticised me for failing. They've always pat me on the back and said, "Well done. Oh, I like it. I like when you're trying to do that. Have you thought about doing this? Can I help you to do this?" And the people of merit are always on your side. And the people who criticise you are, frankly, the people who know they could be doing better in life. Or it's universally true. Anyone who criticises you actually has got a bit of self-hate going on. I mean that, guarantee. Because everyone, I said, like, well, good luck, mate. Can I do anything for you? What can I, I'm really proud of you for giving it a go. I mean, my girls, I've raised 2 amazing young ladies, and I used to say to them before sports days or whatever it was they were doing, I said, don't forget, no one in the history of mankind has ever done better than the best. If you come back and you've done your best, I'm the proudest dad in the world. But if you win and you're quite lazy, that's a shame. So if you come back to me with a B, but you gave it everything you got, I'm more impressed than that by an A where you coasted and you could have got best day in the world or something, And I think everyone loves a trier. And people don't think, well, I need you out in my life. You're bad. You're not good for my mental health, So.
No, that's true. So, as you know, this podcast is called Success Matters. You've been on quite a journey. What does success mean to you now?
I think success to me is doing what I want to do. And I think I think we live in a very horrible hustle culture. I think I don't like it at all. I think if you look at social media, if you look at YouTube, all these things, you're being told how to become a millionaire, how to become a billionaire, all these things, and kids are having it pushed on them. I give talks at schools. What do you want to be when you're older and rich? What does that mean? Or famous? What does that mean? And it's really, really sad. And I think people lose sight of the fact. And what happens is they'll get older and be disappointed because not many people become really rich. I was rich, but and I'm very, very proud of this. I gave it all away. I gave all my money away. So we got to a very good stage in life. We were very, very comfortable. And my ex-wife is lovely. She's really lovely. And when we got separated, I briefly, for about a year actually, I didn't stay there much, but I had a studio apartment. And I didn't take much with me. Now, I'd left the house at a private cinema room, had this, it had that, all this stupid, ridiculous kitchen. It was my dream, And I was suddenly living in a studio flat. And I took 2 boxes of books, 2 suitcases of clothes, and a guitar. And I thought, wow, I'm gonna miss everything. All my DVDs and my cinema room. And after about 6 months, I remember looking around, going, I haven't missed anything. I haven't missed anything. And it was such an epiphany. I just became like a Buddhist on the spot, or whatever it is, whatever beautiful philosophy that I'd been missing all my life. And in that moment, I never cared about material goods ever again. I still don't, by the way. I care about people and I care about experiences enormously. I don't care about good things, I've got other things. And success to me is being released from things, actually, I think. So success to me is doing what I'm a moonshot strategist and public speaker. And every day I'm happy. I bounce out of bed. It's pretty scary how happy I am, and to go out and give a talk to a tough crowd makes me giggle. It's like, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. Let's go, Or other talks, I gave a talk to a big law firm on Friday, and it was just uproariously funny. I felt they could really take anything, so I just went at them, had a real giggle with them, and they were really funny. And it was just, the room was in a great mood, but we got so much work done. And and I'm standing there, and I have moments where pinch me moments where I'm going, I get paid for this. I get people this much fun with really smart people. It's incredible, And I get to give talks at schools. Okay, I do a lot of pro bono work. So, a friend of mine's written to me and said, right, come and give a talk, and I'll go and give a talk at a school. But I'll be so excited to have the privilege of telling these kids, funnily enough, it's what success looks like, It's a success, And I'm going to put them straight, which is that, I think we're in for a shock, success, money doesn't make you happy, money, belongings don't make you happy. They don't. And there's lots of billionaires drinking coffee by themselves on their yachts. What, it's like, and you can have a supermodel in your arm, but you've lost all that history with your wife, or you've lost all that history with your kids, or and it's just I just think it's big. I think doing what you want to do every day, I think that's success. And I don't. If you're a happy dustman, and I've met happy dustmen, I knew dustmen. I mean, where I grew up, people went to jail. People had loads of jobs in the council. Lots of very humble jobs.
Yeah.
But some of them were really happy. And and I was in awe of them, thinking, fair play. You know something most people don't, and you're on 30K a year or whatever, and you're picking up dirt out the street, whatever. But we live in a world where the propaganda doesn't celebrate dustmen and doesn't celebrate, nurses. And you go, oh, go on. In COVID, who are the essential workers?
Yeah.
So anyway, so there you go. Sorry, a typically short answer from Felix.
And I suppose that a lot of it comes down to mindset. So just think, you're taking the example of someone who collects the rubbish, right? The refuse collector. There are those that, of course, see it as a service that they're doing to the community, right? And take pleasure in doing that service. Whereas there's others that probably think, well, that's all I'm ever good for. That's all I'm ever going to be. So that mindset is as much an important part, isn't it, of what you're doing and how you go about doing it.
Yeah, and I think again, that's leadership is a game changer, because I've met people on the 7-figure salaries who feel like crap. They feel unworthy. I'm not good enough. And their boss is tearing the strip off them. I've met other people on earning something in their 20s where the boss makes them feel like they are saints, like they are the most wonderful people, And I've got one of my clients runs a domiciliary care company. She's my absolute business hero. And one of her staff has got a tattoo of the company logo.
Oh, wow.
Unprompted. And she showed Kitty and Kitty, what's that? She goes, I've got the company logo. And Kitty goes, that's lovely. Why? She goes, because it's just so lovely working here. And I love my job. And you make me feel so good. And you've helped me, realize who I can be in life. And you give me so much self-worth. And you go,
yeah,
leadership. That's leadership, And I think, I give talks at housing associations, funny enough. I gave one that went very well to word of mouth. And again, that's a job where people can lose sight of the incredible work they do, It might be just doing the plumbing. You're just doing electrics. You're cleaning out the sewer in a house or whatever. And it's very easy to go, what do I do? What a grunt work. And you go, mate, you're changing people's lives. You're getting people off the streets. You're giving safety to a family. And I think when the right message is communicated to staff of almost any job, actually, I think they can feel incredible self-worth. And where they don't, you've probably got a bad boss or there's a failure at some point. Because most jobs should mean something. Most jobs should have, some jobs are terrible and shouldn't be allowed to. But most jobs, there should be a lot of self-worth attached. And I think that's leadership. And because we are the stories we tell ourselves. And so good leader would teach us to tell ourselves good stories.
That's very, very true. That's probably the most important thing about leadership. And I often equate leadership to raising others, and that's the best way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Give them the right stories to say and share about themselves. So I love that. Thank you. I'm going to borrow that for my next few conversations. So I have a tradition in my podcast to ask a previous guest for a question for my next guest.
Yes.
And my previous guest asked this question, which is quite long, so I have to read it out on a bit of paper. So in moments of profound adversity, what strength or mindset is most critical in transforming hardship into growth?
It could be worse.
It could be worse.
It could be worse. I mean, it's the old Buddhist story. I cried because I had no shoes until I saw a man who had no feet. It could be worse. And I feel now. Don't get me wrong. I don't get to tell that to people who are suffering, but I tell myself that. I tell myself that, and I think it makes you it kind of makes you bulletproof. It could be worse. I lost £1,000. Like you could have lost two. This company's failed. Well, but I live in a country where you can start again, and I could go on the unemployment if I had to. It could be worse. I think. So I don't do self-pity in any way, because I don't know where that gets you. It's like, okay, we just bounce back. It could be worse. So I think, and again, it's the stories you tell yourself. Maybe it's not true. Maybe that's the wrong thing to say, but it makes me bloody happy, because you just go, well, upwards and onwards. So there's that really. I think that's that's certainly how I deal with it.
Yeah, yeah. It could be worse philosophy is well, is a more positive way we could word that. That says something like I don't know. There's always every cloud has a silver lining or something of that nature.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, that's that problem is anyone you say that to probably wants to punch you in that moment.
Yeah,
So I don't say that, and I don't say it could be worse. But for me, no. In terms of what gives me the resilience is, I mean, I came from nothing. I came from, it's. I remember I was dating this woman who was a super wealthy woman, and this was after my marriage, and something big turned up in a box. And it was a huge box, and they got whatever it was out, it was a chair or something. And she said to her kids, "I'll chuck that in the garage." And I said, "Well, we do." And the three kids were dragging this big box out and would take it to the garage. I said, "But that's a castle." And they said, "What do you mean it's a castle?" I said, "That's a castle. Why are you throwing away a castle?" And they said, "It's not. It's a box." I said, "Come in. Put it out in the garden. Put some turrets on it. Put door in it. Some windows." And they spent the weekend in that castle,
yeah,
And because we live in a land of plenty, the kids, our kids, bless them. I think our kids have had much harder than us, by the way. A whole other podcast, but because I think plenty is a curse, I think so. I mean, what outside of my health and obviously my children's health above all else, what can life do to me? So yeah. But
So someone who grew up without much, right, without much around, how have you changed your mindset though around that kind of loss of adversity? Because there are people who grow up without much.
Yeah.
They kind of get into a routine with a settled job and settled income, and then that loss of adversity kicks in, and so then they're not willing to make a change because they're scared of letting go of what they've got, because their mind harps back to those moments where they had nothing. So how did you change that?
I think I had the imagination to. I think I saw the small successes I could have, and I thought if I can change my life, I can change my life, and I happened to go down a certain path. I mean, you know, to my CV, it's a zigzag. It's not. Where's the straight line? So I was never pursuing money. I was pursuing the realization of a project, and money was a function of that.
Right.
And so I think because I had supreme confidence. I still have supreme confidence.
Mm-hmm.
We've got. I'm above average intelligence, probably. I've got a good work ethic. I'm optimistic. I can get people to do things. And so and I think and I refuse to live in fear. There were people who lived in fear of my state. I thought, well, how much lower can you get? What are you scared of?
Yeah.
And I think I refuse to live in fear. And I think, and also because I've walked with very impressive people, very top bankers, presidents, for God's sake. Everyone's the same. There's no magic class of person out there. And I think that was a huge thing for me. I grew up, I'm an anarchist. I'm an anarchist through and through. So if you want to know about politics, I'm an anarchist. And that anarchism, its heart, is actually, it just says, justify your rules. Justify your rules. Okay, so why do I have to do this? Why? And it might be political, it might be structural, it might be economic. Why do we have to do this? No. So I'm not out there. I don't want to throw Molotovs at anyone, but I question everything. And I think and if you question everything, you just get to a point where you realize that nothing's permanent. It's all a lie. It's all a lie that we have to be. That if you want to run a company, you have to go through this journey, and even to start a company.
Yeah.
What is more? Yeah, we have permission. We have permission. I think it goes back to Eddie Dare, this mentor, who just showed me, don't believe the narrative. It's all a matrix, It's the matrix, the film, and it is. And by the way, that film was a left-wing metaphor for the way capitalism speaks to us. Go and see the guys who wrote it and filmed it. It was, and I think when you do that, ironically, it makes you really good at capitalism. Because you don't even believe the BS around that capitalism. Like, basically, I can do anything I want, and I just need to raise some money. And I think, and I've seen extraordinary things. I've seen people do extraordinary things, raise money in 24 hours, which you would have given 2 months for. 2 years for you. That's insane. And so I think it's just, you just don't believe the BS of how the world is. Really stand back and question everything. Go, what do I have to do? How could things be? People I know who could actually help me to get this done and stuff. And I think, and we're in an age where if you can imagine it, you can do it. So I was with a company the other day, and they were sort of like, "Oh, we were saying, what would you like AI to do?" And they were sort of saying, "Oh, I wish AI could take our emails and do this, and that'd be amazing." I said, "Yeah, that exists."
Yeah.
They what like this, and they said, "Yeah, that exists." And everything they said, I knew existed. And that's not the time we live in. How doesn't get people so excited to go? I can do anything. I can start a new company that, Elon Musk, for all these horrendous characteristics, showed the world that you could take on the auto industry.
Yeah.
And I did, and that's the only sort of positive I think I can take from that far. But you do sort of think that people don't understand what he upended. He absolutely exploded all the way. But he upended some. If you're not to be able to do that, if you're a stock car company, and he did in the new technology by starting with a blank piece of paper and say, forget everything that's going on. I want this. You can do that with restaurants. You can do that with pop-up, clothes shops. You can do it with new software. Just take that mentality and write blank piece of paper. This is a problem that's out there. I'm going to solve it with this, and I'm going to. Whether now we've not been able to, we couldn't have said that 50 years ago. Couldn't have said it 25 years ago. You can say it.
Yeah.
You can say it now. I could build an app tomorrow. I know nothing about coding. I built a website in the evening, and I don't know anything about coding. But we did this incredible age. So I think it's the most fascinating time to be an entrepreneur and to be anything, really. I mean, I think teachers hopefully have more, ways to deliver on their amazing, unrivaled service, all these things. So, yeah, is that very... I've sort of gone in circles. I'm not even sure what question I'm asking anymore, but that's...
It's already good, though, Felix. It's really, 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 really good insights. Do you have a question for my next guest?
Yes. What's the biggest mistake you've ever made, and what did you learn from it?
What's the biggest mistake you ever made, and what did you learn from it? Okay, that's a good question. And which would you say is your biggest mistake that you ever made?
Oh, it's really simple. I should have taken more risk.
To take more risk. Okay.
I come across as a very, cavalier. I'll jump into any situation, but I look back and actually I should have taken way more risks. And with young people, I'm afraid parents don't want me, to be spiteful to their kids because I just take risks in your 20s at least. Take risks.
Yeah.
Take risks. Because the consequences aren't that bad, and I wish I'd taken more risks. And now I take any risk I want.
Yes. I think that comes with age as well, right? That maturity, because in your 20s, you're still trying to find your feet, and you're scared of failure, almost. Whereas as you're older and more mature, as you say, what could go wrong, right? Or what's the worst that could happen? And you just carry on. You just carry on doing what you got to do.
I think also when you're young, the stories your parents told you are very strong in your head, and if they're very conservative, it can hold you back a bit, And I think. And it's a shame. I think but no, I mean, look, I'm not complaining. I've had a bloody great life. If I pop my clogs tomorrow, I produce 2 amazing girls, my work's done. So every day's a bonus to me. And I really mean that. I just think every day's a bonus.
No, that's cool. We're at the top of our time now, Felix. It's been a really, really great conversation. If people want to get in contact with you to find out more, what's the best way for them to do so?
There's felixriley.com.
felixriley.com.
Yeah, and a pleasure for anyone to introduce themselves, even if it's just a coffee and a video chat, whatever.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for taking part in Success Matters, Felix.
Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, Sanjay, it's been the loveliest chat. Thank you.
To find your success, contact me at info@successmatterscoaching.com. That's info@successmatterscoaching.com.